Hello, my name's Emily. I'm an artist and jewellery maker. Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would do a video that was very much enjoyed the last time I did it. And I'm literally just swatching all of my acrylic gouache tubes, all of the colours colour-coded, and I have two brands that I'm swatching today, which is the Holbein Acryla Gouache and the Turner Acryl Gouache. I have lots of colours and more colours than the last videos. Can't wait to show you all of my pretty colours, and they are my pride and joy. I use them for lots of various things, from frames to actual paintings and everything in between. I am swatching on Cass Art's heavyweight cartridge paper. I think it's about 200 GSM. And then all the shade names have been written down, so it takes the pressure off my poor brain. I'm swatching them together, so all the Holbeins are in one row, the Turners are in another row, and then all the reds together, oranges, yellows, and so on. So without further ado, I'm going to stop the rambling and let's get started. So the first shade in this whole swatchathon is Wine Red by Holbein. It is an acrylic gouache formula, so that means it has a polymer in it, which is just a fancy word for plastic. So when you add water to it once it has dried, it then won't reactivate, or when re-wetted, it won't then blend into other colours. It stays put, basically. So it's quite good for permanence if you're trying to do a painting and don't want then layers and layers over the top when added water to go all smeary. Yes, that is the technical term. I certainly find in the reds, the Holbein acrylic gouaches have a bit more reliability. With this, and out of these four here that I'm swatching of the Holbein, they are all very similar in texture, and I can rely on that. I know what I'm going to get from the tube. They're very similar to the colours on the tube as well, so it's quite easy for kind of quick decisions when painting. There are elements of inconsistencies within the brands, which I will discuss when I see them and when I show you them. But as far as we go, the reds are all very good in both brands. We then have the Turner Acryl Gouaches, which are very similar in formula, just slightly thicker, I think, in the viscosity. And then the red ochre one that I'm swatching now is my most used. I'm so glad I have it in the 40ml because I do use it a lot. It's kind of a red that I use for portraiture. Because it has that slightly neutral undertone, it works so beautifully mixed with skin tones, but also for added kind of richness and warmth. It's just stunning. One thing I like about these acrylic gouaches in both formulas is that they have a matte finish. So when photographing paintings or whatever I'm using the gouache for, whether it's miniatures or anything like that, the studio lights won't interfere with the quality of the photography, so I can actually get a really realistic interpretation of what it will look like, which makes that part of creating art and selling art a lot more seamless. We are now on to the oranges, or warm orangey toned paints, peaches and whatnot. As with the reds and with all of the swatches that I'm doing, the Holbein Acryla Gouache is on the top and the Turner Acryl Gouache are on the bottom. So a lot of these colours I tend to use for undertones, so I often use these in portraiture as a base underneath. One thing I will mention is the Holbein definitely has more, say, nuanced shades, perfect for portraiture. Things like to replicate like veiny under eyes and whatnot. I think Holbein Acryla Gouache has a lot more of those sort of almost the difficult colours that you would then have to replicate and mix continually. So for that reason, it's very useful. Whereas I think the Turner Acryl Gouaches are definitely more substantial in the sense of there's lots of reds, lots of oranges, lots of yellows. There is a bit more kind of variation within the hues themselves, whereas Holbein definitely has the more kind of unique pastel shade. They also do have, I believe, pearlescent and other sort of effect shades as well, and I do believe Turner, which is the one that I'm swatching now, has the Japanesque version, which is also spectacular. It has a lot more of a grain and a texture, which I love personally for my mixed media work. This Japanesque strong orange is like my perfect orange. It's like everything I would want in sort of slightly pyrrole, but a little bit more of the earthier, almost Martian hybrid. It's beautiful. The permanent yellow orange as well I love for adding a bit of zing or vibrance, but still not sacrificing the warmth of a painting. So I do think these oranges that I have swatching here with the Turner Acryl Gouache are my preferred out of the oranges, but then the Holbein Acryla Gouache Jaune Brilliant is one of my most favourite shades in the series of Holbein Acryla Gouaches. I do love that shade in particular, especially paired with an ultramarine blue. Chef's kiss combination, if you ask me. Now, if you know me in my personal life or just know me in general, yellow is my favourite colour. I cannot fathom the love I have for the happiest colour in the world. It just makes me so unbelievably cheerful when I see anything yellow. The warmer mustards and ochres are definitely my preferred, but I am also partial to a murky yellow like this ash yellow here. The kind of more grotesque the yellow, there's something in me that just kind of, it sparks inspiration. I just want to go and get a canvas out and start painting some form of homage to decay in the natural world. But then speaking of the mustardy ochre shades, I also love these sort of colours, the really warm, deep yellows. They kind of remind me of almost a cosy light that you get in the winter when the flames sort of burn and you're watching your favourite TV show, the blankets are around you. I love that. And this Naples yellow I think is the nicest Naples yellow I have ever used. I have quite a lot of Naples yellow in various mediums, but this one just has the perfect milkiness to it that I think adheres so well to the paper. It blends beautifully with other colours. It's just stunning and so versatile. I do, however, find the lemon yellow from Holbein Acrylic Gouache leaves more to be desired because it's quite transparent, but I am aware finding a truly opaque lemon yellow is rather difficult. This dandelion shade, by the way, is probably my favourite Turner acryl gouache shade that I have in my collection. Mine is running slightly thin and I think it's just a murky dream. I absolutely love it. Again, I think the next shade that I swatched, the Japanesque Ivory Yellow, you can really see the almost grain to the paints within this. It's beautiful. I find if you're working on a mixed media piece and you want to have a reliable source of texture without having to layer and layer and layer and find almost having things almost bulking up, especially in sketchbooks, this sort of variety of paint works wonderfully. There's a purple within this collection and a couple of greens that I'd like to eventually try because this texture is divine, and I think the less that you can pile on top of each other means that there's less disruption of the paper, a little bit of added finesse without sacrificing the yummy texture. Now, I don't think I'm alone in the sheer delight that a new green paint gives me, but there are elements of these greens that I'm going to be swatching in both the Holbein and the Turner acryl gouache that I find are difficult, and it's the sort of problems that I have within these sort of formulas. And I think it's the jelly-like consistency or the oiliness that comes within the gouaches. Now you see the shades that I'm swatching here, the cobalt green and then the sap green next. Milky, opaque. There's very little sort of disruption within the swatching and the pigmentation. Now then look at Viridian and you can see there's elements of kind of like lumpiness. There's a bit of separation. And it's these sort of thicker, darker jewel tones that have that slightly more transparent consistency, but that then don't seem to hold their own in terms of their longevity in the tube. I do shake them very well before I use them. It isn't a case of that. And I do try and almost squeeze as much as I can and quite vigorously, so I make sure all the pigments don't separate when I'm going to use them, but then I pour them out on the palette paper that I'm about to use, or a palette themselves, like the ceramic palettes, and all I get is like oily gel, which is a shame because these aren't cheap paints. And then to have that element, especially with the darker colours that I think are quite important to have in a palette. Yes, you can mix them with black quite easily, but I think having that sort of standalone shade almost for convenience is also, you know, you're paying £5 or £6 per paint tube. You want to be able to be sure that you can rely on using it for its whole, you know, tube's lifespan. So to not have that is a little bit disappointing. And I find that these blues, greens and a couple of purples, there is a magenta as well that does the same. It's that sort of depth and value that tends to be the struggle. But I just thought I'd mention that any of these sort of tones similar to Viridian within the swatching, you'll see that I've had to really work to get that swatch out. I don't want that to come across as though I'm being disloyal to how it is. It does take a lot of work, but also I want to make sure it looks nice for the swatch because I'm a perfectionist. But it doesn't mean that I don't support the brand. I love the brand. I love the paints. Apart from these sort of jewel tones, I wouldn't repurchase those because I do struggle with those sort of consistencies. I think I'll just mix them with black from now on. But I just thought it's worth mentioning that I tend to struggle a bit more with that. If anyone has any recommendations on how to deal with that, I don't think I'd be the only one, but look at this ivy green. It's just very streaky and the texture's like, it's thicker, but not in a good way. It resembles that of like an off-congealed sort of texture, which I'm not a fan of, to be honest. But less of the negative effects, more on the positive effects. My favourite greens within this collection are the olive and sap green of Holbein. They are super pigmented, a little goes a long way, but they're also very versatile because you can blend into other colours, you can blend them into watercolours, you can make other colours with it. They are just breathtaking. And then from the Turner Acryl Gouache, I love beryl green as a background shade, but also as an undertone. So if I use that as like a base layer, it's super opaque and thick, and it really holds its own. And I also love fresh green because it's so zingy and vibrant. Oddly enough, I believe this Prussian blue is the only one of that sort of deeper tone that I didn't struggle with. I don't know whether it's because it's a slightly newer version. It's one of the newest ones that I've got, but it was a lot easier to work with. Same with navy blue, although the navy blue was starting to almost turn a little bit. You can see there is a bit of streakiness to it, which is really disheartening, but I'm going to try and move on. Ultramarine blue, like I said, is perfection. This with Jaune Brilliant is breathtaking. I really love outlining with ultramarine blue. I find it gives a bit of interest without it being black, but because it's more of a mid-tone than say the Prussian blue or navy blue, it just adds a really nice interest to any paintings. Cerulean blue, I don't use as often, but then seeing it swatched here, I really should, because look at that. It's like a slightly deeper periwinkle on the cusp of being slightly warmer than a lavender. Okay, brainwave light bulb idea. What if I did a video using my least used art supplies? Cerulean blue would be in there, it'd be interesting. But back onto swatching. Smalt blue is that one milkier shade that did kind of congeal a little bit. When I swatched it initially, or well, when I put it on the palette paper, it had like a almost magenta sort of oil coming out of it. I did shake it and it did kind of mix a lot quickly, so it wasn't quite as temperamental as the other shades, but again, disheartening. I thought I'd mention as well these ash shades. There's ash rose, ash yellow, ash blue and ash green, and then the misty shades, misty blue and misty green, are beautiful and very versatile as well. They are very neutral, so they're less of that sort of bright opaque colour, but they have that sort of neutral depth and undertone to them that you can really work with them with anything. Botanical pieces, portraiture. They are great for adding nods of a colour. So for example, I often use misty blue to add a nod as though whatever I'm painting, I want it to look like it's white without painting it white. So adding a shadow or almost like a negative effect of misty blue makes the piece that I'm painting look more white than actually just using white. It gives a bit of interest, a bit of depth without having to add something too dark that kind of counteracts the fact that I'm trying to paint something that looks white, like a china teapot, for example. And then same with the ash colours, they don't compete with anything bright that you use. So you can use those within almost shadowed pieces, add a bright pop of colour like this light blue that I'm showing, and it adds a shadow without it being too bright and then you don't have a focal point. It just gives it sort of harmony, depth, without then fighting for the attention of the painting. The two colours of paints I can never resist are greens, as I've mentioned, but also purples, especially the milkier pastel purples. I just love them. They make me happy, they make me feel calm, and I cannot help, it's what the heart wants. This deep violet by Holbein, similar to the Prussian blue that I swatched before, is newer, so it does have a bit less of the temperamental values that I have struggled with before, whereas you can see this blue violet here definitely has that streakiness to it again. I would like to point out they don't smell bad, they don't smell off or anything, they just behave a lot different to when I initially bought them. So again, more information would be great on that. I don't have any problems in the studio that I use. They've been here, there and everywhere really. There's enough ventilation. They aren't in direct sunlight. I really don't know what's causing this. Any more information that you may all have would be really handy because it is quite frustrating. Same with this red violet shade. The shade, when I first bought it, I adored it. When it dries, it goes slightly lighter, which is something to mention with the acrylic gouaches. The dark shades often dry a little bit lighter and milkier, whereas the lighter shades tend to dry a little bit darker and have a bit more depth to them. But I don't mind that. I've kind of worked with them enough now to kind of predict what they're going to look like and not kind of use the wet colour as the end colour. That being said, on the start of my acrylic gouache journey, I was often very bamboozled by the fact that the shade that I initially put down, by the time I'd finished the painting, had changed. It does take a bit of getting used to. I think the best way I can suggest is doing what I'm doing now when you first get the shades, swatch them, see how it looks, see how you can predict that within your paintings, make a swatch book. It's a very fun project, believe me, I've done it before. Very exciting. Like I mentioned before, the pastel shades of the Holbein Acrylic Gouache are definitely the ones that stand out to me. I think they are the most reliably fantastic shades within the collection. I think, like I said, they have a lot more uniqueness within these pastel shades. They are slightly thinner in consistency, so you do have that sort of spreadability a bit more, but then you can also water them down as well. They work quite well with watercolours, a bit more, I'd say, than the Turner Acryl Gouache. I'd say if we're still speaking about the pastel Turner Acryl gouaches, they're definitely more pigmented, but then I think they are better more as like a coat of colour, or they have that sort of element of opacity that you can use on a variety of different textures, from paper to canvas to even other aspects like wood and ceramic, etc. I find that they are they work better in that sort of sense. They definitely have more versatility, whereas the Holbein Acrylic Gouaches have a bit more reliability on paper, and the colours are beautiful. You can see I'm struggling with that violet shade. It is difficult. But funnily enough, as I was saying, the pastel shades, I enjoy more of the Holbein Acrylic Gouaches. This lilac I prefer to the Holbein lilac. I think that warmth is definitely more versatile because I can mix it with, for example, this pastel lavender and get something a bit cooler, but then I can add it with a pink, and I think it just has that sort of ability to mix with lots of different colour palettes. For me, I quite like being able to mix it with lots of different mediums because I am more mixed media. This is the only colour that I find the Holbein Acryl Gouaches definitely has more sort of about it. There's a lot more pinks than there are in the Turner range. If I could make any more suggestions, it would be more pinks, please. I love me a pink. My personal favourite pinks in the Holbein range are Cosmos Pink or Cosmos Pink and Light Magenta. I like mixing them together. I find they have a lot more sort of ability to go with lots of different colour palettes. The Cosmos Pink definitely has a bit more of a cooler, slightly Barbier sort of colour. This Opera Pink is so bright, it's like literally glowing on the paper. Sorry, I got distracted. And then the Light Magenta is a little bit warmer, not quite as, say, orangey peachy as the Shell Pink, but has a bit more depth to it as well, which I quite like using that. I can mix it with white and get the colour that I need. I just think those two colours I find I reach for, especially when I'm doing floral pieces, because they blend quite well with natural world without being too kind of artificial sort of colours, but they are beautiful. The Pale Pink I find I wouldn't necessarily buy. Again, not because I just think it's a bit surplus for what I need it for. I can kind of mix light magenta with white and I wouldn't necessarily need it, but I do believe I bought pale pink first, so hindsight's a wonderful thing. And then the Shell Pink works really well for really pale skin as blush. But another really weird use I have for it is I feel like it's the most perfect tear duct colour. So when I'm doing eyes, Shell Pink is normally the colour I use for the tear ducts. Very, tear duct pink, who'd have thunk it? But anyway, can you tell I'm tired? The magenta shade here is probably the worst of that sort of poor consistency that we've had before. It's almost got lumps in it that you can see, or whether it's bubbles, I'm not sure. But this one, it's, again, there's no smell. It just performs really oddly, opposed to it being like, I really don't know what's going on. Any information would be great, but I do struggle with this. However, the other colours that I have are fantastic, so I don't know whether it's just the type of pigments that are used for the slightly deeper colours. I'm really not sure, but again, those opera shades and anything of that sort of fluorescence really struggles to be shown in its truest form on camera. This pastel rose shade, again, should be in that video that I was going to mention of shades that I don't use enough, because goodness me, I need to use that a bit more. It's beautiful. And the final colour family to be swatched are the neutrals, which funnily enough are the most used for my painting because I often mix them and I find that botanical sort of inspiration is very present within my work, but same with portraiture. But I do have favourites within that. The sepia I like again for outlining because it's a bit softer than say black, and it also works really, really well for natural pieces and portraiture. I think between raw umber and burnt umber, I think I wouldn't necessarily buy them both. I think I would probably buy the burnt umber next time and then keep the sort of greyish brown or greyish beige from Turner. I think both of them together are it's a bit too much of the similarity, but I do like them both. I'm glad I have them both, but I think elements of that are my own kind of mishaps in purchasing them. I could have definitely done with more videos like this to be able to see which shades I do not need because would be too surplus within my collection. So I have done my research now and I know what not to get. But there was a time when I was relying on the tiny little swatches on Jackson's, which are great, but to see how they relate to what you've already got within the frenzy and joy of art supply shopping, let's just say there's a blind eye to similarities. No judgment, we've all been there. I believe Greyish Blue is my newest edition. I got that from Cassart when they started doing the Turner Acryl Gouaches, and it's almost like the most perfect milky Payne's Grey paint. I'm so glad I have it because Payne's Grey is a colour that I use quite frequently, especially in skies and clouds, and within pencil crayons as well that I use. I love the Caran d'Ache Payne's Greys, and I have a Winsor & Newton Galleria acrylic paint in Payne's Grey that I find all of these together work so cohesively and beautifully because the tones are all very similar, and it just makes me so happy. There's that sort of element of harmony within my paintings when I use these. Very, very happy. Again, Japanesque beige, the Japanesque texture of the Turner Acryl Gouaches are beautiful because they have that grainier sort of consistency when dry, and I find them very interesting to look at, and as a bit of a geek of art supplies and consistencies and formulas, they just satisfy that part of my soul. It's like ASMR but for your eyes, and I think the next part that I'll be showing in this video is quite similar because all of the colours are going to be shown together in order. You can see actually that the darker shades I was talking about earlier don't look as bad when they are dry. Maybe they just need a couple more coats, I'm not too sure. I might try and experiment with that again to kind of update you on that, just for my own personal research reasons. But there is no perfect formula, but there are perfect shades, and I do love all of these colours that I have. I'm very happy to have all of these in my collection. They're the most used art supply that I have in my collection. I find them a joy to use. I find having the sort of versatility within that. I use them for pretty much everything. I'm even starting to do other projects that aren't just kind of the arts and crafts and painting sides of things. I'm going to hopefully start doing miniatures and kind of dioramas that I'm going to also be using these for. So stay tuned if you want to be part of that journey. But that is the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video or like me, please do subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you here and join me on all of my arty endeavours. I have a link to the Jackson's art supply shop that I use where I buy these, and it is an affiliate link. I have a Holbein Acryla Gouache link and a Turner Acryl Gouache link. If you click those and purchase them through that link, I do get a small commission, which is a great way to support my channel and my art endeavours without costing you any extra. So if you do use those, I will thank you in advance now. I really do appreciate anyone supporting me in this way, but also a massive thank you to you just watching this video here. It fills me with joy when the views go up because I feel like I might be doing something somewhat of the right sort of ilk. As mentioned in my last video, the studio vlog, we have had some renovations to the bungalow, which thus means I have an art studio all to myself. So I've been under the process of making sure that that's being done and decorated to my liking and making me feel like I've got a little creative sanctuary. So when it is all done, I will do a studio tour, but it is taking a little bit longer than I would like, but I'm trying to conserve as much energy as possible for general life, but it's fine, we'll get there, it's all good. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you have a truly magical rest of your day. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.